Everyone says the jab is the most important punch in all of striking, but very few people that I know devote a considerable amount of time to getting good at the jab. Usually, it's just something you flash out pretty quickly before you get to the much sexier right hand. But if you don't devote time to getting good with this, you'll never get good with this. In this video, I'm going to show you guys how I like to throw the jab, give you a couple tips and tricks to make it faster and more powerful, and show you why the jab is not only the most important punch for fighting, but also for self-defense. If that sounds interesting to you, make sure you're subscribed and you have notifications turned on, and let's get started. So the jab, like so many other terms in boxing, comes from old school sword fighting. Back in the day, they fought not with their hands, but with a long sword in the lead hand and a short sword or a dagger in the rear hand. And the jab was taking that long sword and stabbing your opponent up top to open him up for a fatal stab down there at the bottom. Meaning, the goal was not to kill him with the jab, although obviously you could, so much as it is to open him up for the big strike in the back. However, that doesn't mean you can be lazy with the left hand. As I was saying earlier, this hand might be enough to get the job done if you do it right. So I think the best way to learn any kind of strike is from the ground up, meaning we start with the footwork. I'm going to start here just out of range of the bag. I'm going to sit my weight in between my 2 feet. Where my head is where my weight is. If I sit back on this right foot, that means my balance is on my right leg. If I'm leaning forward, my weight is right here. Typically, I like to sit my weight right in between my feet. In order to cover the distance that I need to cover, I'm not going to lunge with my left foot and extend my right foot. Instead, what I'm going to do is push off this back foot to cover that distance. Again, I'm here, I push off the back foot. Now, what I'm making sure I'm doing is keeping my right foot good and planted. I don't want to super extend myself here because yes, now I'm landing this left hand, but now I have to really regain my balance before I throw my right hand. Instead, I want to stay situated on my back foot so that I can throw this jab and at any time, rotate over to throw my right hand. Again, I sit here in between my weight, push off the back foot, there it is. Now this can be a point of contention for people, but really, I think it's up to taste. Some people say your lead foot needs to point right at your opponent, whereas others will say the foot can turn in slightly. Honestly, I've done both ways, and I think it kind of depends on what you're going for. But what I will say is important is the direction your lead hand is pointing. Meaning, you can set yourself up for success or failure based on how you're standing in relation to your opponent. If I'm standing here like this, totally squared up, yes, I have even guard on both sides of my face, but my hand is not pointing at my opponent's face, but rather at his shoulder. Same thing here, my right hand goes for the shoulder. But if I allow myself to angle slightly, now I can take my lead hand and point it right down the center line at my opponent. The back of my knuckles point straight at my target. From here, I have an easy shot right for where I want to go. Yes, you're a little less guarded from here, but you have this hand pointed right at your opponent. And the goal now becomes to keep it trailing their center line no matter where you're moving to. Now here's something that could be a question of taste, but really it's more about knowing when to use it. That being, do I rotate my hand or do I leave it vertical? The answer is it kind of depends. If you're able to rotate the hand, you've got a bigger surface area to make contact with your opponent. But if they've got a good tight guard, you can use the vertical hand to slide it in. Neither one is wrong, it really depends on taste. And I can go over how and why to rotate your hand in this video right here. But for right now, I'm going to alternate between throwing the thumb up jab and the thumb over jab. Now, moving up the body, let's talk about the trunk and then the shoulders. You don't want to treat your upper body like you do with the hook. What I mean by that is, with the hook, I go from facing my target all the way over towards 3 o'clock. A lot of people will go for a full rotation on that jab and then again have to carry themselves over to throw that right hand. There is a slight rotation on the jab, but it's not as much as the hook. I'm going basically from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. And I'm definitely not going to let my foot turn all the way over. That's unnecessary and it slows me down. If anything, there's a slight turn of the foot, but for the most part, I just want to tap the ground with it. So, again, I get a slight rotation through the trunk, there's my punch. As for my shoulders, with the apex of the punch, I want my shoulder to be up and my chin to be down. Again, I'm going to be here, boom, using my shoulder to defend myself from any counterattack from my opponent. Same thing, my right hand is going to stay here by my cheek. I don't want to rotate so far that I expose myself to my opponent's counter. I'm going to stay right here, good, tight, and controlled. Again. So we've talked about making sure we keep our weight in between our 2 feet. You can take a small step if you need to, or just tap the ground and rotate. You want to let the trunk twist just a little bit. You want to bring the shoulder up, and you can either rotate the hand or leave it in place. Now, we got to talk about rhythm, because you can do all of these things perfectly, but at the wrong time. Meaning, if I tap the ground, rotate, and then throw, I took my lower body entirely out of the punch. Or I can throw the punch and then tap, and now I've taken my upper body out of the punch. What I want to do is make sure that as my foot hits the ground, my hand hits the target. It's important that you have rhythm with the whole body. You don't want to just stomp and then throw, and you don't want to throw and then stomp. You want everything, every part of your body, from the feet to the knees to the trunk to the shoulders, working in tandem. Again, we're here. Outside of this being in your opponent's face and doing some considerable damage, what it also is telling me is that if I land this clean, I can land this clean. But if, let's say, I get jammed up here, I'm going to be too close to throw the straight right, so maybe I should modify to an uppercut, or a rear hook, or a knee. At the same time that this is doing damage, it's also giving me plenty of information. So don't ignore what your jab is telling you. If you're too far away, cover distance to come in with the second hand. If you're too close, throw a close range strike. This is equal parts weapon as it is hunting tool, so use it as such. So this drill makes a lot more sense when you have a live human being, so I got a live human being. So when I'm working on the bag, I can be aligned as such. I can be here and throw my left hand and right hand as much as I want to, because that bag isn't going to move. But when I have a partner, not an opponent, she wants to keep me honest and make sure I'm not just wailing away. So every once in a while, if I get lazy, Tracy's allowed to just throw something back at me. Oh crap, right? So instead of just staying squared and throwing whatever I want, I'm going to have to work to set up my right hand, my right kick, whatever. So I'm going to line myself up, not here where we're on train tracks, but here where my left hand is cutting down her center line. I'm right here in my fighting stance, my shoulder is squared and my forearm turns slightly in. The back of my knuckles is pointing where I want my punch to go. If she's wanting me to throw my jab into her left hand, I'm pointing at her left hand. If she's holding for a rear hand jab, I'm pointing at the rear hand. Doesn't matter, I want to make sure I don't have to do this to throw my punch. It's a straight line right from where it's at. Now, on that note, if Tracy is being a statue, I can obviously throw my jab right here, right? Don't have to do any kind of adjustments. I can also move myself around, right? I can be here, track around, make sure my hand is where it needs to be. No matter how I move, my hand is always in line to throw that jab. But if she wants to make my life really hard, she can also move around. So she starts moving, go ahead, and now I have to track right here. Not impossible, but it does make it a little bit harder, which means if she's moving and I throw my jab at the wrong time, boom. That's why it's important to learn to scope with the back of your hand. So I'm going to be here tracking Tracy with my left hand. When I'm ready, make sense? If I have a good traditional guard and my hands are up here like this, then my jab can fire straight from where it needs to fire from. But if, let's say, I'm getting a little bit lazy or I think I'm pretty smooth, my hands are going to be a little bit lower. Nothing wrong with this if you know what to do. If I'm here with Tracy and she keeps tagging me on the head, it does not behoove me, nor does it look cool, to keep my hands down, right? But if I'm here and she throws something at me, boom, and I'm constantly out of the way, then it's fine to keep my hand down low, right? But what I don't want to do is have my hand down low, and the minute I go to fire my jab, I don't want you to let me hit the jab, okay? The minute I go to fire my jab, I pull it up. I want to throw my jab like coach says to, right? From the starting position. But if my hands aren't already there, don't waste time coming here and then firing it, just right where it's at. If your hand's low, learn to target with the knuckles from a low position. Same thing if your hands are high. Don't bring them down to throw, right? Wherever your hand is at, that's where the jab is. Your jab has to be a straight line, but that doesn't mean a straight line across the x-axis. I mean, I guess it does, but it doesn't have to be completely flat. It can be up this way, straight this way. I guess if you're tall, punching down, I don't know what that's like. But the point is, wherever your hand is, you have to be able to fire that jab straight out and right back where it came from. I don't want to be here and loop it back. It needs to be a straight arrow and a straight arrow back, because sometimes arrows return back to you. Now look, before we move on, I want to say there's no magic off button to self-defense. There's not any one move that works 99% of the time, every time. But if there was, I would say it's probably the jab. If we're talking about a street fight, which I don't like talking about, but if that's what we're talking about, the most likely strike you're going to have to deal with is going to be a right-handed swing. Reason being, most people are right-handed. They want to hit with their dominant hand, but most people don't know how to throw a straight punch. So they're going to default to creating power by swinging their hand at you. And if you know anything about geometry, you know that this rounded circle will take more time to get to its target than a straight line. So in this case, Tracy's going to use basic math to get to me before I can get to her. So she's going to take her left hand, which we're keeping in a low stance position, and she's going to put it either in my face, in my throat, or in this case, in the pad. Nice and slow. I'm going to be here, I take my swing, boom, right there. Immediately, Tracy has found herself in her stance. She's immediately cutting me off by jabbing me in the throat. She's got her guard up so she can immediately follow up with the right hand. Again, we're here, boom, right there. So if it comes to a self-defense situation, if you're reading your pre-fight indicators, you don't want to stand here like an idiot, right? This is completely off balance. There's no way to throw strikes quickly. You're basically asking to get hit from this position. So we have a bunch of different guards that we use when it comes to self-defense. We're not going to start here with the stance that we just spent so much time talking about. So what we're going to do is start bringing our hands down low. From here, Tracy's in her fighting stance. If she brings her hands down a little bit lower, turns the palms out towards me, it's a little bit more like, hey, keep away from me. But it's still aggressive. Now I know we're fighting, right? So she might actually preempt me into attacking her from here. She brings her hands down even lower, crosses them in front of the waist, doesn't look very aggressive. But if I start swinging at her, she can easily start blocking me. Very easy to start defending yourself from there. Doesn't look like much, but it is much. From this case, she's gonna intercept my swing, stab right down the middle, set up for a right hand, left hand, whatever she wants to do. Make sense? And while we're talking about jabs in self-defense, a jab is not always a jab. What I mean by that is, in a sportive context, I'm either bound by the glove or by the rules to where I have to make contact with the front of the knuckles or the back of the knuckles. But if we're talking open-handed, that isn't the case. So let's say I'm one of the nerds who likes to focus on poking someone in the eyes, or heel palms to the face, looking at you, Krav Maga, or one of my favorite strikes, the cup strike to the throat. These are all awesome strikes. They're very valuable, but the jab teaches you how to do all of them at the exact same time. Because if I get very good at aiming with the back of my knuckles, I can make contact on her nose with the closed fist jab, or right to the eyes, or I can heel palm to the jaw, or I can cup strike to the throat. So if you practice your jab, give me just a couple regular jabs right here. Boom. She gets really good at landing that wherever my hand happens to be. If it's moving, she can make contact wherever she wants. Now what I want you to do, without stabbing me in the eyes, I want you to throw that strike right here at my eyes. Go for it. Right there, again. Good. Good. Boom, bring your hands a little bit lower. This hand, yeah. Right there, good, go. Boom, yes, good. Now, here's the ultimate relationship test. I want you to cup strike me in the throat. I want you to just, right there, okay? Go for it. Yeah, good, again. Good, again. One more time, boom. All of this is the exact same mechanics as throwing a jab. And the same pitfalls you can fall into apply here. If I throw, let's say I poke at Tracy's eyes and she moves out of the way, go ahead and move out of the way, and I commit my weight too far forward, now I'm off balance, she can come back with whatever she wants. But if I learn how to sit my weight down, boom, I'm right here back in balance, right? You don't have to overcommit here like this. You can just quickly throw your strike, or boom, boom, quickly throw your strikes. The point is, what applies to one strike can apply to multiple. Low, middle, and high guard. Nicely done, good job. So, that's the jab. The fundamental, most important strike in boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, karate, self-defense, doesn't matter. You master this, you are 90% of the way to becoming an effective fighter and an effective self-defender. Either way, you guys, I hope you guys learned something and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to subscribe, tap the notification bell, like, share, and leave a comment. This has been Rob and Tracy from Combat Self-Defense. I want to thank you guys for all the hard work. Thank you for the hard work yet to be done, and we'll see you next time.